If you're looking for a podcast that packs in sound property advice, as well as offering you an insight into making the world of property effective and ultimately work for you, you're in the right place. Hosted by Arsh, the original property rebel. He's written an Amazon bestseller, created the Property Investor app, the UK's first, and is an experienced property mentor. More importantly, he talks the talk and walks the walk.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of The Property Rebel with your host Arsh. And in today's session we're going to be looking at lease options as a strategy and why they're so effective as a property strategy. Before we do that, I want to give a quick hello to all new subscribers, all new listeners, as well as existing listeners as well. Just want to say a quick hi. Thanks for sticking with me. Hopefully you've enjoyed the episode so far and you've taken away lots of information. So let's get straight into it. So what is a lease option? In essence, a lease option, break it down into two segments, lease and then option. And we'll be going through these in different sections. And just so that you know, lease option is not a new strategy. It's been a very, very popular in other strategy in other countries such as the US and overseas markets. And what tended to happen is when the market crashed back in 2007, 2008, people needed another strategy as to how they can acquire properties as opposed to literally stand still. So people started to lease properties off landlords. So just give you an example, I come to you and say, I'm going to rent your property off you for the next 3, 5 or 7 years at £500 a month, just for argument's sake. However, during that time, within that 3, 5 or 7 year period, I would like to purchase that property off you at a price that we agree today. So let's just imagine that the price is £100,000. And within that period of 3, 5 and 7 years, the way that you would benefit from it is not only by making cash flow from leasing the property. So let's just imagine that you take a single let property and you turn it into a multi-let, means that it allows you to make cash flow from the property. So let's just imagine that you're making circa £500 a month cash flow. Over 5 years, that cash flow is £6,000 a year. Over 5 years, that would have generated you roughly around £30,000 as a property from that one property. Now, if you had agreed to buy that property off the landlord at £100,000, you'd like to think that within 5 years, that property is going to increase in value to circa, let's say 120,000. Now, when you come to purchase a property off the landlord in 5 years' time, your purchase price is 100,000, which is static. So that means that you purchase the property. Now you're purchasing the property below market value because the new market value due to the inflation of the price is you're buying it circa 20% below market value. Plus, you would have generated enough cash flow from the property to almost service the purchase or the deposit element of the property. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I haven't lost you there. So just imagine that £100,000 property, you need a 25% deposit, which is 25,000. Then you need stamp duty, roughly around 3% with the 3% surcharge. So that's another 3,000. Then you've got your legal costs, then you've got your surveyor's costs. So roughly it's going to be around 30,000. But the property's generated 30 grand over the last 5 years. So therefore you use that 30,000 to fund the transaction, and it's not actually cost you anything out of your own pocket. In actual fact, the landlord's property has paid for itself. So this is one of the reasons why so many people like lease options. It doesn't always happen like that. And that would just happen to be a great example. But in the same scenario, there will be lots of scenarios where the property would have overfunded itself. It would have generated more than what's required, which means that you would have actually got a cash back, if you want to look at it in that kind of sense, or it would have got very close to. So let's just imagine that you needed £30,000 to act as a deposit and all the purchasing costs, but the property would have generated, for argument's sake, 23,000. So it would have got you the majority of the way there, and then the rest you'd have to put out your own pocket. Now, one thing I will say is that when you lease a property off the landlord, all this is done through solicitors. So with a rent to rent, it can pretty much be done with an agreement that you would have already had drawn up. With the lease option, there has to be what is called a consideration payment or a lease pay or an option payment. So what tends to happen is, have you ever heard of the term, you buy a property for £1? Can you buy a property for £1? Or how people acquired a property for £1? That consideration can be as little as £1. And what you have to do, you have to give a payment to the landlord to show that's been a consideration for the lease and the option agreement. So in all my lease options that I've got, I've always put £1. There have been some landlords that have asked for a little bit more, and it could have been, and this all comes down to subject to negotiation. All depends on how good your negotiation skills are. So there's been one scenario where I've had to pay £1,000 option fee, or the majority of the time the option fee is £1. So I've done options on pieces of land, I've done options on houses, I've done options on flats, I've done options on development opportunities. So you can pretty much put an option on anything that you want. Just to give you an example, just to give you an idea, I'm going to give you a case study. So let's just imagine Fran and Fred as an example. They're looking at, to rent at a flat which is worth £180,000 right now. They take on a lease option agreement where the owner offers them the right to buy the flat at either £180,000, or let's just say the owner says, you know what, we appreciate the property is going to increase in value, and so instead of me giving you for £180,000, why don't we set the rent, the purchase price at £200,000? So they've made a bit of a margin as well. So let's just set it at £200,000. So it means that within that period, Fran and Fred are still buying the property. That is £200,000 within the 3 years, but then they get to rent it off them within that period. The beautiful thing about this is that Fran and Fred can now go off and generate cash flow. And if the property was in an area, let's just say for argument's sake, London, where prices keep increasing, hopefully within that 3 year period, that flat would have hopefully gone up to circa in excess of £200,000. Let's just use £230,000 for example. Now, when they come to exercise the purchase, they will now be buying the property below market value. And because by agreeing a price in advance, it makes it easier for the investor to plan financially and save for a full deposit. The longer the lease and the prospect of ownership provides security and reduces the amount of dead rent money going against the drain. So with a rent to rent, you're never actually owning the property, you're literally leasing the property. With a lease option, you've locked in the option to purchase. Now, one of the things that I will say is that remember the word option. It's an option, not an obligation. So during that period, if the prices do take a downward spiral and it's not in excess of 200,000, or it hasn't even hit the 200,000 that Fred and Fran were looking at, Fred and Fran can very easily say, sorry, Mr. Landlord, we're not exercising our option to purchase right now. And this is where you can exercise you can reject the option. That you don't have to buy the property. It's an option, not an obligation. And that's probably the best way that I'd describe it. If the prices increase and they go in your favour, yes, exercise the option. If they don't go in your favour, you do not exercise the option and you say, sorry, it's not for me. And then that's where you could potentially go back and renew or review the purchase price, as well as review the rental figure and potentially the term. So instead of it now being a 3 year term, say, well, I'll tell you what, why don't we extend it by another 3 years? Which means that now you've got another 3 years, which means from the landlord's point of view, it is a peace of mind transaction. So this also benefits the landlord because it's suited to buy-to-let landlords who own a number of properties that they may wish to sell in a few years' time. It doesn't suit sellers who want to sell their property today. So if a seller wants money out of their properties today. So let's just say, for argument's sake, the house is worth 100,000. They've got a mortgage on it at 70,000. They've got 30,000 locked in as equity, and they want that 30,000 equity. A lease option may not be the best strategy. So this is the reason why you have to consistently understand what the pain and the motivation is from the landlord. Why they're looking to sell. Do they need the money now or not? How much is outstanding on the mortgage? If their house is worth 100,000 and they've got a mortgage of 95,000, you can ask the question, pretty much by the time they pay their legal fees and by the time they pay their fees, are they pretty much breaking even? So therefore, it's now really the right time for them to sell. So one thing that you could do is say, I'll tell you what, guys, give me the lease option for 5 years, and instead of you selling the property for 100,000, where you're probably much breaking even, I can possibly offer you, and then possibly is a big word, offer you 110,000 in 5 years. So you're not breaking even, you're actually making money. And if you were to structure their finance where they're now on capital repayment as opposed to interest only, chances are they'll start to build some equity back into their property as well. So there are ways that you can actually help landlords. So can you see the benefits as to how this really works? There's so many ways. It works extremely well for the investor taking on the property. It works extremely well for landlords who may have tired properties, landlords who are in negative equities, homeowners who want some form of security that they're going to get a rent, an income, as well as a potential sale within that period. And as if you structure the figures correctly, there's no reason why you can't create a genuine no money down deal. I've done many deals like this where the transaction has actually funded itself, meant that I've not had to put any money out of my own pocket. One thing I will say is that this strategy is also great for those just starting out in property as well. Now, the reason why I say that is because first, the speed of transaction or the ease of acquisition is quite easy. You don't need a mortgage. You do need solicitors to draw up the contracts because it needs to be legally bound. If you don't do it legally, very simply, the landlord could come back to you within the 5 years or within that term and say, guys, you know what, I'll tell you what, the property prices have increased. Do you mind if I just take it on from here? And because you've got nothing written down, you could literally have done all that work for the main gain in the lease option is the increase in property value. The cash flow is great, and let's face it, cash flow is king. However, if the price has gone up by £30,000 or £40,000, that is the main attraction. Giving you an example, I've got a property in Wolverhampton where I took on the lease option at £78,000, which is exactly the amount that the owner owned on the property. That property has increased now to circa £128,000, means that I'm going to be generating a gain of around £40,000. In the meanwhile, the property has been cash flowing roughly around, I think it's about £200 to £300 a month. So not massive, but the benefit for this one is the fact that I'm going to be making a massive capital gain. So with the lease option, when you come to purchase it, you can assign the option to someone else if you want to as well. So I'm going to be looking to exercise my option to purchase at 78,000. I'm then going to put the property on the open market and try and sell for its full market value at circa 120,000 and benefit from that capital gain. So the cash flow was great, but my intention, in essence, if you want to call it something, I was pretty much almost like babysitting the mortgage. And it's worked extremely well for everyone involved. The landlord that we took the property on, he was in financial difficulty when we took the property on. So we stopped him from being repossessed. Off the back of that, we've now got a property that we've literally looked after for the last 5 years. We've got about 3 years left on the option. It's about 2 or 3 years left on the option, but now is the right time for us to sell. So we are going to try and exercise the option. The landlord gets his 78,000. We sell the property on the market for 120,000. We've made some money off the capital gain. The landlord has managed to keep his credit file in check, and it works extremely well for everyone involved. Remember, I've got the option, but not the obligation, and that's a key thing. If the property had not increased in value, but then we could have either renegotiated or handed the property back. So there we have it, guys. There's some of the key tips and takeaways for lease options. Hopefully you've enjoyed the session. Hopefully you've taken away a lot of notes. Don't be afraid to take properties on. Sorry, one thing that I should have said is that one of the reasons why this is quite an important strategy for new guys or people starting out in property is because by you taking on a lease option, you can also demonstrate to mortgage lenders your experience in the property field. So when a mortgage lender is looking at you, and if you wanted to buy a HMO as a first property, they may turn around and say, sorry, you don't own any properties, but so therefore we don't consider you to have sufficient experience. If you can demonstrate to them and say, guys, well, I'll tell you what, I don't own this property, but I've got the lease option on it. Here's all the agreements showing you that I've taken this property on back in 2014. We're now in 2020. I've actually controlled this property sufficiently and effectively and successfully for the last few years. Yes, I do have the experience. No, I don't own it, but I can guarantee and demonstrate that I do have the experience and run it successfully. So therefore, I do qualify and I have ticked the box on there. So I know lots of people that have done that to get through to cross the box of experience as well. So that's another little tip for you. So guys, as always, hopefully you've enjoyed the session. Hopefully you've taken away lots of golden tips and nuggets from it. I've got a very active YouTube channel, so I release a new video every Thursday at 4 p.m. Is it every Thursday at 4 p.m? Yeah, I've got over 200 videos on my YouTube channel. If you like the thought of that, all you got to do is go over to YouTube and type in Arsh Ilahi. So that's for more and free education. If you want to stay in contact with me, you want to connect with me socially, please feel free to do so. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter by searching Arsh Ilahi. Finally, if you are looking for lease option deals, if you are looking for rent-to-rent deals, my question to you is, have you downloaded the Property Investor app? And if not, why not? It's a completely free resource for you to use to see all kinds of property deals all over the UK. It's the UK's first property investment platform showcasing all kinds of property deals. So we've got lease option deals, we've got rent-to-rent deals, below market value deals, development opportunities, service accommodation deals, just to name a few. And all you have to do is literally go to our website, propertyinvestorapp.co.uk, or if you want to open your smartphone, go to the App Store, type in Property Investor, and there it is right in the palm of your hand. It's completely free. It takes approximately 2 minutes for you to register, and you'll see all the deals that we have on it, and we upload deals on a day-to-day basis. Any questions, guys, please feel free to reach out. But on that note, I wish you all to be safe, healthy and happy, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
The large majority of people make a positive change if they take immediate action. So act now. Download the Property Investor app and join Arsh on his social media channels to excel your property journey.